Hey there, welcome to the latest episode of the Campus Comics Cast. This is Dan Brown, and I'm joined this time by
Scott Reed
and Mike Atchison.
And, again, we just still ask that you kind of bear with us if there's any sort of technical difficulties during this episode. We are still, recording online with everybody. We're all really socially distant here. But, letting everybody know, too, you can still come by the store. We just asked that everybody, wears a mask and is kind of smart about everything right now with everything still going on. But we are located at 816 Suite B, East Main Street, Carbondale, Illinois. And we're open Tuesday through Saturday, 11 to 5 every day. And if you want to call before you come over, this number is 618-457-6011. And, we're still, getting in books. Everything's going pretty smoothly so far. Distribution's been kind of crazy this year. And now it looks like DC's just going to have one distributor again, and that's going to be coming up pretty quick. So fingers crossed everything goes smoothly with that, So we just ask that if there are hiccups, you just kind of bear with us for right now, because we can't do anything about it at the stores. It's totally out of our hands. It's not like we don't want you to get your books, but I think everything's been going smoother than we all predicted, by this point. So.
And if you want to improve the chance that you get your books, be sure you put in a pull order from previews, which we did last episode. So
yeah. So, we always do an episode every month talking about what's coming out in the catalog. And, we encourage everybody to get their own copy, too, because there's just so much stuff packed in those catalogs. We literally can't go through it all. We don't want to go through everything, really. No. Stuff that sucks, but
I can only talk about Funko for so long.
Exactly. But there's and what irks me too is I know there's good books in there we're not reading. Absolutely. Just because we don't know about them. Yep. But we're not doing previews this time though. That was last time. So we're gonna continue our look at Batman: The Adventures Continue, which is the digital first book that came out when everything was shut down, when books weren't really coming out. But that's still going on. And I guess if you're playing along at home, too, the series has started to show up on the DC Universe app. So if you have that, you can read not the chapters we're going to be going over this time yet, but, the first early few are on there if you have that and you want to read it that way. But we are going to look this time at chapters 13 and 14, which will be the physical issue 7 when it comes out. And again, this was a 6-part miniseries originally, and now it's going to be 8.
Yep. So we're at the penultimate issue.
Yes, penultimate issue here.
Until they add another issue.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine. I'd be okay with that if they just made it monthly at this point.
Yep.
It's a good book. Again, you want the quality to stay there, so I don't know if you can keep Paul Dini on this book for a long time, but he's done it before. He did Streets of Gotham and different things. And you got to think everybody, has got their schedules kind of out of whack right now. But we're going to look at we're going to start with chapter 13, Red Sun Rising, part 5. And again, this is written by Alan Burnett and Paul Dini, with Ty Templeton handling the art. And we had so Becky Cloonan is the cover artist on this one. They've had really great covers on this series too. I've been getting the regulars and the variants because they've all been pretty good. But so this chapter opens with Leslie Tompkins coming to her clinic.
Clinic? There you go.
Clinic. I was trying to think of, and finds Red Hood is there stealing medicine from her. And they kind of get into a debate, which is usually what you expect in Leslie Tompkins scenes in Batman stories. There's always some kind of debate over the ethics of what Batman is doing, and kind of going there with Red Hood now, too. Then we see Leslie calling Batman, letting him know that, hey, Jason was here. And they're just sort of kind of going over the game plan of what they're going to do. We've got Batman, Batgirl, Alfred in the Batcave here. And Batman takes off, and Batgirl goes to follow him. Then we cut to a scene underground, like I think it's in a sewer, where we see Red Hood has captured Robin and has placed him in this sort of watery death trap thing. Kind of reminds me, there were a couple times I can think of right off the top of my head where Batman was in like some sort of, chamber that was filling up with water on him in the 60s. There's a couple covers I can think of right off the bat like that. And so that's kind of what this reminded me of reading this. Then we get a scene where Joker is reaching out to Penguin in the Iceberg Lounge, and Joker's new henchman, Straight Man, is there. And Penguin's, here he calls him his subordinate, Mr. Wing, the sort of bird creature from earlier in the series, shows up again. It just seems real, I don't know, it seems real out of place here with Batman the Animated Series, but they did do stuff like this in the original run of the cartoon, where you had these kind of big creatures that would show up a couple times. But it really kind of feels against the sort of, themes of the stories, that they did back then. But there's definitely precedent for this kind of creature in there. It just seems kind of out of place. But then Straight Man and the creature are kind of fighting in the Iceberg Lounge, and then Red Hood shows up, starts shooting everybody with darts to knock them out.
This scene had one of my favorite lines from the Joker, where he's talking about Straight Man, and he goes, "Prep school, Heisman Trophy winner, West Point candidate. They were going to make a super soldier out of him, one of those Captain White House guys."
yeah.
Which is definitely a play to Captain America,
Yeah.
So.
And DC's done sort of evil Captain America. I mean, I think you can make that claim with Deathstroke, even too, that sort of thing. But yeah, again, kind of leading that Straight Man's just like, your typical thug that you'd usually see, running as a henchman for one of the villains. But then later on, you have Batman kind of showing up to the scene, and Penguin just kind of chewing him out, complaining about, his $3 million chandelier that was damaged and things like that. And, Batman and Batgirl kind of searching the area for clues. Then we see Batgirl is been hit with one of these darts and is passed out on the bat cycle. Then we see Red Hood down in the sewer pulling a Pennywise, where he apparently shot Batgirl from a sewer grate, and then shoots Batman too, knocking him out. And that's the end of this chapter. Was there anything you guys wanted to go over with this part, or I feel like it's all kind of straightforward?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of these issues have been a whole lot more straightforward. So either that, or we're just getting better about, kind of synopsizing down to the heart of the story, one of the two. So
I want to point out too, again, we've got sort of the old style design for Leslie Tompkins at the beginning. She was never on the new Batman Adventures, which is basically the style of the rest of the characters here. So they're still using the Batman the Animated Series design for her. And again, just sort of out of step with some of the other designs. And again, it's basically the Justice League design of Joker here, not the new Batman Adventures, which was just the sort of white dot eyes in the sort of shadowy eye sockets with the no red lips design, which was a real kind of simplistic, kind of stylized, pared down version of the Joker, which I think was divisive among fans.
I didn't notice any new really weren't any new characters, introduced.
No. Yeah, and again, it's kind of late in the story to be bringing in new players.
And this was intended to be the original end of the story, so
yeah.
Well, this story left a worse taste in my mouth than the Jason Todd stuff does usually. The stuff he did with Leslie Tompkins and him knocking out Alfred is just, I don't know. I'm not real sympathetic to this character at all.
Anything else for part 13?
I think that's it.
All right, so jumping into chapter 14, which is part 6 of Red Sun Rising. Still Alan Burnett and Paul Dini, Ty Templeton artist. Justin Erickson does the cover, so it's kind of this cool, mostly red with Nightwing and Robin and Batgirl kind of inside of Batman's cape. So it's kind of a neat effect.
Yeah, it's a real nice iconic cover, and it does kind of throw back to the sort of icon that was used for the series that played over the end credits of the original Batman the Animated Series, where you just sort of had the silhouette of Batman with the moon behind him. It really kind of evokes that, I think. But yeah, you've got Batman kind of raising up his cape and almost making the bat symbol with the silhouette there.
And I think we've talked about this. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going, is it just me, or does Nightwing look like he's got the 90s mullet and ponytail going on there?
No, he definitely does. He had a mullet in this design.
Did he?
Yeah. That's definitely on point.
I think we talked about this before, but on the title page, they also have, Batman created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger. Yeah. So I think we talked about that special being available on Hulu or something. So if you want some more information about that, be sure to check out that special. But Batman, after being shot with the dart, awakens to find himself down in the sewers, along with a chained up Joker and Tim still trapped inside of that water tank. So Batman, or Red Hood, then arrives on the scene, and Batman speaks to Red Hood about what's going on between the two of them. And while he's doing that, he kind of drops some subtle hints in the conversation, which Tim Drake is able to pick up on, which is going to help allow Tim to actually escape. So while part of this conversation leads to how did Jason Todd actually escape the burning building, which had all of the balloons in it, and it's kind of silly here, but how he got out was he managed to attach himself to one of the balloons, and it kind of pulled him up and out to safety. So anyway, Jason Todd basically says, all right, Batman, what I want you to do for me is I want you to kill Joker the same way that he tried to kill me here. So here's a crowbar. And of course, Batman refuses to do that. So Jason then tosses a gun over to Joker, assuming that Joker will obviously want to use the gun. But instead, he just kind of tosses the gun away, because he knows that as long as he doesn't, do anything too terribly stupid here, then Batman's gonna basically leave him alone. So after some back and forth, Joker's henchman, Straight Man, arrives on the scene. Joker has a tracker on him that Straight Man has the ability to follow up on. So, but during this fight, Tim Drake actually is able to escape. And the hint that he caught on from Batman was to, plug up the hole that's feeding the water, and that will cause these old sewer lines to actually, crack under the pressure. Straight Man takes out Red Hood, but then Tim smacks Joker with that same crowbar, which is now dropped kind of on the floor. Tim tosses over to Batman, but Batman actually is actually really pretty much beaten by Straight Man at this point. But the Batman gets lucky because this failing sewer system knocks Straight Man and Joker both into the sewer. Red Hood also kind of gets knocked around, but he gets hung up on, I don't know, something protruding out of the wall.
The crowbar goes flying and sticks in the wall.
Okay, that's right.
He catches him. That's what saves him there.
That's all right, which is kind of silly, but I guess they're trying to do some irony there. That
it takes comic books physics for that to happen.
Yeah.
So, Batman tries to save him. Of course, Jason doesn't want to be saved, so he basically pulls himself loose from the crowbar and then also falls into the sewer along with, where Joker and Straight Man previously fell. So then we kind of wrap this story where Batgirl and Robin and Batman are, basically looking in the river, trying to find any sign of the three, Joker, Straight Man, or Jason, and of course, they don't find anything. So then kind of the epilogue of the story is Jason wakes up, finds himself on this shipping boat, and lo and behold, who's there? Deathstroke along with Sonny. And they basically invite Jason Todd to become a part of their quote unquote family. And then we get the end to issue 6. So what else to talk about here in part 14?
Well, I think, you have Red Hood kind of setting up his revenge of, trying to get Batman to kill the Joker. And again, that comes straight from under the Red Hood, where Judd Winnick kind of brought this character, back into the regular DC continuity. It's interesting, too, because, they did a pretty good cartoon adaptation of that, a while back. And I was just watching this again, sort of, because they just did the Batman Death of the Family sort of interactive movie. And, that's a big part of that, too. It takes a lot of stuff from under the Red Hood, but, kind of lets the viewer pick, which way the story goes in there. So, Mike, you're shaking your head. You have something to say about that?
No, he's shaking his head over the sneeze in the background.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Taking issue with what I was saying.
Yeah, I hope Scott has some mad editing skills.
Yeah, okay.
No, that's all going to stay right in there. So.
Yeah, the listeners have to hear it now.
That's right. So that's too much editing. That's what they get, what they pay for. So
that's right. I think it's also interesting at the end when they're searching the river. Batgirl is using drones that she's running off her cell phone, which again was not a thing back when the new Batman Adventures was on the air. Cell phones were still pretty clunky and they weren't in everybody's pocket yet. And again, we weren't talking about drones the way we are now.
Nope.
I do think it's interesting too at the end, on the boat where you have Deathstroke, Sunny, and Red Hood. Kind of goes more in line with the Batman, Batgirl, and Robin dynamic, so I think we've got kind of counterpoints to them now. I don't know if that'll go anywhere, if they're going to do any more of this.
But it gives them a perfect opportunity for new stories moving forward if they want to continue this past issue 8. So
yeah. I think that's all I really had. You guys have anything else you wanted to bring up here? Or?
Nope, it was a pretty straightforward story. So not as good as some of the previous ones, so it's like a very fine minus for me. Most of these have been, I think, very fine. So it's just a little bit less, but still pretty good. So
yeah, I'd probably go very fine with this too. Again, it's interesting, but again, you're kind of cribbing from Under the Red Hood here, which of course is a Red Hood story. I will say too, as far as flying away on the balloons, it's like at least we got an explanation for how he survived. Usually we never get that stuff, especially with Joker stories. Yeah. It's just they magically survive somehow.
It might have just been better for him just to not have said how.
Yeah. I mean, there's that too. So,
Mike, you got a grade on these issues?
Yeah, it's not going to be as high as yours. I'd say a fine / very fine at best. It's losing its sheen for me a bit, and just the plot seemed a little bit thin in places, and maybe it's just Jason Todd. I don't know. I thought there'd be a little bit better payoff with all the, the foreshadowing and his little in the background appearances throughout all these issues. But overall, it was okay. It's just not. It didn't seem to lead to where I thought it might.
I think we're getting a Poison Ivy story. At least that's the cover I remember for like 7 or 8.
Poison Ivy and Harley maybe. Might be a Christmas thing. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think the last issue is sort of a standalone thing.
Yeah, that would be good. I look forward to that, I think.
This story, we have the end at the end, so.
A little bit of a palate cleanser.
Yeah. And again, a good way to kind of maybe launch off some more stuff. We'll see.
Right.
So, yeah, so kind of going from something from a DC cartoon, we kind of go into some of the news we have about their movies now. Is, with theaters still basically being shut down, and it seems like maybe they're open for a week, then they're shut down again, then they're open, and it's like, who really wants to go to a theater right now, too?
I do.
Well, in a perfect world, I want to, too. I don't know if it's the best idea right now.
My wife and I just booked, we just got tickets for Wonder Woman on Christmas Day down at Cape Girardeau.
You could go to the theater, or you could stay home and watch it on HBO Max, which apparently was supposed to be a one-time deal, we're finding out now, but Warner Brothers has decided to release all their movies next year, same day on HBO Max. So,
which includes what? So Dune, Matrix 4, are the
King Kong vs. Godzilla.
Yeah, okay. What else?
Oh, man.
I mean, Dune and Matrix 4 are the big ones to me, so.
Well, Dune and King Kong Godzilla are the big ones for Legendary, who are now suing Warner Brothers over this. So apparently, the other day when they made this announcement, there are 17 movies that this is going to affect. Um, so apparently, none of the studios that made these movies knew about this announcement until 90 minutes before it happened. So it kind of caught everybody by surprise, and there's definitely been some backlash to it. So apparently, to get Wonder Woman 1984 released this way on Christmas, they had to go back in and kind of do some negotiations. Supposedly, Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot got $10 million for this because they get, part of the profits from the box office, which they're not going to have now. So the theory is that Warner Brothers didn't want to renegotiate 17 movie contracts all at the same time. So they're sort of asking for forgiveness instead of permission here. So they will definitely be paying for this monetarily over the next year, probably. But yeah, Legendary is behind Dune and King Kong versus Godzilla, two big kind of tentpole pictures, and they were pretty upset about it, apparently. Which is understandable. Everyone has contracts, everything. But, the other part of that is everything's so weird right now. When is it going to come out in theaters?
Yep.
Are you going to get like what happened with New Mutants?
Yep.
Where we're looking forward to this movie for years, and now nobody saw it in the theater, because of the situation we're in. And again, contracts are part of that. People expect, box office is still money. It's like theaters may not be making as much, but movies are still breaking in, billions of dollars. So people expect their cut of that, of course. But yeah, and again, Christopher Nolan has kind of, the director has kind of spoken out against the move, and he's somebody that Warner Brothers seems like they want to keep him happy. So, and again, I don't think any of his films are affected by this necessarily. I don't know if he has anything coming out next year. I know they just released Tenet, so I can't imagine there's anything for next year yet from him.
No, but I don't know of anything. But
yeah, and again, Tenet had such a weird release too, and it's about to be released, on Blu-ray.
Yep.
But like,
I didn't understand what you said. Christopher Nolan came out in opposition to the move that Warner Brothers made.
Yeah, saying that they're just kind of, I can't say for sure this was him. I've kind of been reading about this where I can, but there was someone that said they are just trying to prop up their streaming service, which has had a rough launch this year. Which yes, absolutely, that's part of this move. Is to get people to check out HBO Max. Yep. But it's also like, when is this stuff going to be released? Movie studios need to start making money. Theaters are in a pretty precarious situation right now, and of course, the theaters are really upset about this.
Yep.
I know AMC kind of spoke out against that. I know Cinemark did too. I feel like AMC might have been taking legal action, but I might be getting that confused. Again, all we know is what we read online. We don't have any kind of insight. We have no insider information on this stuff. We're reading it just like everybody else.
Yeah.
But
so, Dan, do you have a subscription to HBO Max?
I do have an HBO Max subscription.
Okay, Mike, do you have a subscription to HBO Max?
No, and I won't until they work out a deal with Roku. And that's what I was going to say in response to Dan. I mean, is that if you want to smooth the wrinkles of this launch, figure out the Roku deal.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know. I mean, I bet 60 or 70% of the new TVs that you purchase nowadays has the Roku software for streaming.
Yeah, I have a Roku TV. That's how I watch this stuff. HBO Max is the most expensive service I subscribe to like this, and it is the most difficult to use. Like I will watch it through my PlayStation or on my tablet, or I'll Chromecast it to the TV somehow, or I'll cast it somehow. But it's like, it shouldn't be. Why is it 2 or 3 more steps than everything else I'm doing?
And even if you take the steps, there's only, Chromecast for sure. I've done that before, unless the technology's better now. But it seems like there's such a delay and a quality degradation.
I'll have a delay. I'll have a delay when I'm starting up, not so much like during a movie or something. But yeah, again, it's another step like that no one else is asking me to take.
Right.
Yep.
And what kind of, oh man, I've been going on about this at the store for like the last month, probably on Saturday. So if you've been in there and heard me go on about this, I'm sorry, but we're going to get into it again. And Mike just kind of brought this up yesterday too when I was in there. But the real sticking point is apparently it's not money, it's user data, is what they're going back and forth on. So it's not your money they want, folks. It's your information.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that just shows what a commodity that is now and will be going forward. And it's just like, man, like that's really what it comes down to. And it's just like, make a deal already.
Yep.
You know, share the user data or whatever. Everything's being tracked anymore anyway. You know, I hate to say it, but that's just the reality we're living in now.
I just don't see this service being worth $15 a month. I mean, it just seems way more expensive than, you know, everything else.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. HBO has always had this sort of perceived value, you know, where they do that stuff. But it's like, but they have the least amount of stuff usually.
Yeah.
You know, the least amount of content.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. And it's just like it was them and Amazon Fire that was kind of the sticking points, and they finally made a deal with Amazon Fire the other day. So it's just Roku that they're not on.
So Dan, what's the arrangement with? Oh man, I totally lost what I was going to say, because as soon as you said Amazon Fire, I thought, well, that's one option I have. But go ahead. I'll think of what I was going to ask.
Oh, I'm not sure now. You kind of got me off my train of thought when you interrupted. Yeah, I'm like, okay, what are we going to talk about?
Yeah, well, I'd asked about it just because of the fact that I was going to see if you guys didn't have it, was this announcement enough that it would cause you to want to sign up for HBO Max? Of course, Dan, you've already got it, and Mike, you would get it. You'd already have it if the Roku was out there. And I'm trying to decide for myself, is this the pool that is going to get me on?
I know what I was going to ask now, Scott. It was Hulu. How's the Hulu factor weigh in on this? If you get HBO Max, do you get Hulu wrapped in with it?
No, because that's part of Disney.
I think.
Oh, that's right. That's with Disney. I'm sorry. I totally.
Well, is it one of the add-ons you can get through Hulu? Because I know there's different apps and stuff you can use through Hulu. I'm not sure if HBO Max is one of them. It might be.
I don't know.
But again, I think it's like you have to sign into your Hulu to access that, because I know that, you know, Amazon does that kind of stuff too. Again, I don't do any of that because I like to keep my services separate like that.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't say anything on the HBO Max website about it being through Hulu. Oh, wait a minute.
Yes, you
HBO
can.
Max is
Hulu and HBO Max.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know in theory, I would think you could start up your Hulu app on the Roku and watch HBO Max through that, maybe. Yeah. But again, another hoop you have to jump through that you shouldn't have to.
And especially if it's going to be the same price, then.
Yeah, it's not cheaper. You're paying for Hulu, and then you're paying for HBO Max on top of that.
Right.
And HBO Max just got rid of their free trial too, because they have Wonder Woman coming out, and they don't want everybody signing up for Christmas, watching it, and then canceling.
Exactly.
So they're still
people don't do that. That is.
I totally do that kind of stuff.
I think Netflix got rid of their free trials as well. So all the streaming services are basically getting rid of those free trials.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it was fun while it lasted.
Yep.
Again, the Roku thing is ridiculous, and we're deep into the holiday season here as we're recording this. This should have been figured out by now. There's a Dr. Gang Green that I watched from Tennessee. It's like a horror host, shows old movies, and he, has shows on a public access channel out of Nashville. That public access channel has a Roku app. I mean, it's pretty bare bones, but that's how I watch that. Like, I can stream a public access channel from Tennessee on my TV. Why can't I do that with HBO Max?
Yeah. Well, like you suggested, it's not an issue of getting it on the Roku. It's an issue of sharing the information.
Yeah.
So,
but it's
just, technically not the problem. It's just
Yeah, and like HBO has said before too, like when they have a deal, in theory, they could be on there in minutes. Like, it's ready to go. Like, they built the app for Roku. For Roku. It's just like, it's not like they don't know how to do it or something. Yeah. Like, it's ready to go. It's just waiting for somebody to blink here,
Right. Well, anything else to add about HBO Max before we jump over to another topic?
Yeah, if you have DC Universe, I think you can still get it cheaper for right now. If that's something you're thinking about, because I know all the video content's about to leave the DC Universe app. So
Yeah, they got a special like 6 months, 20% off for HBO Max. I saw whenever I was on the website. So well, in other movie news, Disney the other day released kind of their plans for the next few years. What was it, Disney 23 or something like that? I can't remember the actual name of the announcement.
This was the Disney investor meeting is
That's
where
right.
Came out of.
That's
which
right.
Which I get that's what it is, but man, Disney's got to come up with a better name for that.
Well, yeah, I don't think the intent for this was advertising, but I think that's kind of
come on, Scott. They are going hard with the advertising on this. They knew this was going to blow up.
Well, of course, some of these announcements are pretty bare bones. So,
absolutely,
so of course, stuff. Yeah. So in addition, they had announcements for Star Wars. They had announcements for just the regular Disney animated stuff and Disney movies, and of course, they had announcements for what's coming out Marvel-wise for the next few years. So I'm just kind of going off the list on the Marvel website.
Yeah, do you have a list in front of you?
Yes.
Let's just run through that real quick, just so everybody hears. Yeah, in case someone hasn't heard yet.
Yeah, so they made announcements. They made announcements for Fantastic Four, WandaVision, Doctor Strange, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Loki, What If animated series, Shang-Chi, Ms. Marvel, Captain Marvel 2, Hawkeye, She-Hulk, Moon Knight, Secret Invasion, Ironheart, Armor Wars, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 with a holiday special, Groot and animated shorts, Thor, Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania, and then Black Panther 2, I think, are all of the Marvel properties that they made some type of announcement for during this investor call. So I'm going through the last thing on the actual list first, which was the Fantastic Four announcement. Not a whole lot of details on this other than the fact that John Watts, who is tied with some of the Spider-Man project, is going to be the director for this show.
Yeah, he's directed the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies.
Mm-hmm.
So you got a decent pedigree there.
Yeah.
I can't see Marvel dropping the ball on Fantastic Four. Again, we don't know any kind of release date. We don't know casting. We don't know anything else other than
nothing.
Number 4 is all they showed.
And a director name. So
yeah, a director. Yeah, but again, I got to think they're kind of I hope they would be treating this carefully and trying to do this right, because we don't need another bad Fantastic Four movie.
No, we've already had, 3 of them, so. Okay, so next thing on the list was WandaVision gets its second trailer. Basically, a little bit more of the same. We see Agnes Harkness and Monica Rambeau, and it looked like Kat Dennings from Thor was in the preview, though I may just be reading more into that than too much into it. That is actually scheduled to start January 15th, so this has been delayed multiple times, but it looks like we now have an official release date for January 15th.
I think last time we were talking about that on here, weren't you predicting by the end of the year, Scott?
They had announced it was going to be out by the end of the year. Okay. This was basically the only Marvel film only thing Marvel cinematic related that we were going to get this year. So now that basically means we got nothing in 2020 Marvel cinematic.
Right. But again, just 2 weeks off too from that, so not that far back.
No.
From what we were last told, but yeah.
But I definitely think it's pretty clear that they're playing off the crazy side of Wanda, of Scarlet Witch. Yeah. So lots of obvious spoofs of sitcoms in the trailer. I mean, Brady Bunch and Bewitched, and the list goes on and on. So yeah, the second preview looked like more of the same. At the end of the preview, it does take a little bit more serious tone. So I am still looking forward to this, and if for another reason, just to get something new for the MCU, even though it's on Disney Plus. So,
and then Falcon and Winter Soldier, they announced a release date for that too, right? Was that March?
Yeah, March 19th. So Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to start March 19th. It's definitely going to be
probably when WandaVision wraps up, I would assume, right?
Should be pretty close, because that's 2 months, so you're looking at about 8 or 9 weeks. So if it's 8 episodes, and then we got a week off, and then an episode. So
that would be nice if they kind of staggered them like that, where like you're constantly getting something new. Because I don't know about everybody else, but for me, there hasn't been a lot on Disney Plus this first year.
There's not. So
I
basically,
mean,
have 2 seasons of Mandalorian so far is the only thing,
I'll watch Mandalorian repeatedly, but other than old Marvel stuff on there, there hasn't been a lot on there for me to check out. So I'm definitely looking forward to this stuff.
Yeah, but that trailer gives us a glimpse of, Baron Zemo from the movies. What we're assuming, and I think it's pretty well been announced that we're going to get John Walker taking on the role of Captain America. So we kind of thought, most of us thought, oh, Sam Wilson's going to be Captain America, and maybe that's going to be like the end of this is whenever he takes on or towards the end where he actually takes up the shield. But I think we're going to get John Walker at the start as Captain America. So again, looks like it's going to be primarily action driven though, which that's good because WandaVision is not going to be a big action, type of a series. So,
has there been an appearance of the U.S. agent in any media?
No, this will be his first appearance, as far as I know, in any multimedia other than comics. So,
maybe a game.
Oh yeah,
not like
not part of the MCU. So
right.
They did announce Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which is also going to include Scarlet Witch. So I guess we can say that Wanda survives WandaVision. It also is going to introduce America Chavez. The thing that I think I'm most excited about is Mordo is going to be back. Now, thing that I'm not particularly excited about, I know Dan is going to be mad at me whenever I say this, but Sam Raimi is going to be directing. And I don't know that he really has good directing chops anymore. So
I'm hoping we get Army of Darkness Sam Raimi for this as opposed to Spider-Man Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
I feel like that's why you bring him onto a Doctor Strange movie again, and they keep throwing out horror vibe or whatever. We'll see. Mm-hmm. We'll see how horror Disney goes with something with their money roll.
It gives me concern because over the last few years in Marvel, they've leaned more towards funny / campy, and that rubs me the wrong way in my Marvel movies. So bring me more Winter Soldier is what I want.
Well, that is their bread and butter at this point too.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah. Let's see. Next up, we got Loki. So it apparently is going to pick up right where Endgame left off in the life of Loki, though he does apparently quickly get captured. There's references to a Fantastic Four idea called the Time Variance Authority. So you see this TVA logo, throughout that preview. So I guess we're going to be dealing with time travel, which kind of ties into the Multiverse of Madness stuff, ties into Endgame. Going to tie into the Ant-Man and Wasp stuff we'll talk about here shortly. And I guess the one thing is that they are kind of implying that Loki was DB Cooper.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I think that's a cool thing to throw in there.
So that is just listed as coming out soon. Same way with Doctor Strange. I don't think they had a release date. I didn't write one down if they did. So now the next thing is one that I'm pretty excited about. It's the What If animated series, and for you DC people, this is like the Elseworlds of the Marvel universe.
I totally forgot they were doing this.
Oh, I had.
They showed that trailer. Like I was looking forward to it when they announced it, but it's been so long, I think, since we've heard anything about it. I just completely forgot it was a thing.
And they are bringing back, for the most part, where they can, they are bringing back the voice actors to portray the characters. So a lot of time in the preview is spent on what is, I think, supposed to be the first issue, where it's like, what if Peggy Carter were to become Captain, not America, but I don't know if they'll call her Captain Britain or what. So we've got Haley Atwell returning to voice that. We got a what if Tony Stark was Star-Lord, apparently. What if T'Challa was taken by Yondu instead of Peter Quill? To me, one of the shots looked like it was the Into the Spider-Verse Peter Parker. So again, that's listed as soon. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, we're getting the Watcher in there. That'll be kind of neat to see how they do that.
Was it Jonathan Wright? Was that the name that they said in the? I guess I could just look instead of guessing.
Speculating.
Right? Yeah. So
let's make stuff up.
Yeah. Yeah. Why look online? We don't. Yeah. I'm sorry, Jeffrey Wright. So Jeffrey.
Oh yes. Wright, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. That's right. R-I-G-H-T. That right. W-R-I-G-H-T.
Mr. Gordon.
The voice actor. There you go. Okay. Then we got Shang-Chi, which I'm surprised, July 9th. I
Yeah,
had forgotten about this movie.
My birthday, so
Your
we'll see.
birthday?
I might
Happy
be going
birthday.
to see Shang-Chi on my birthday.
Well, see, I'll probably if theaters are reopened, I'll probably see this July 8th on opening on the night before.
Right.
So, we're apparently gonna learn a little bit more about the Mandarin. Somebody the other day was asking me, well, what Marvel movies do we get next year? And I said, well, we get Black Widow and Eternals. I thought Shang-Chi was gonna come out later on.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get at least 3 next year.
Yeah, and they said Aquafina's in that now too, right?
What?
The rapper Aquafina. She's in it. She was in Crazy Rich Asians, and she has a show on Comedy Central now too. But yeah, I think
they have a list of the cast, and of course, I didn't want to talk about them too much because yes, Aquafina is listed as she's playing Katie.
Yeah.
Which I'm not super familiar with some of these supporting characters, but I do recognize, some of the actors that are also going to be in the series. So, I am kind of looking forward to this one. So maybe we can get a good martial arts something for the MCU, since obviously Iron Fist did not quite, hit a good chord with most people. So, Disney Plus series. We got Ms. Marvel, which is going to be a brand new actress by the name of Iman Vellani. I'm probably butchering her name. I'm a little concerned about this one. There was just a game released called The Avengers, and it actually kind of focused on Ms. Marvel as like the main character of the game, or one of the primary characters of the game. And well, that game lost a lot of money for the company that produced it. So it'll be interesting to see if fans will accept the TV version of this character. As far as I know, they talk about how popular of a character that this is all the time, but she really doesn't maintain a series for a very long time, so we'll see. It comes and goes.
I feel like with Marvel's publishing schedule, you could say that for most of their characters, though, at this point, too.
Yeah.
If it's not Spider-Man or X-Men, your series is getting canceled in a couple of years.
Yeah. So anyway, hopefully the series will do a little bit better. They did announce Captain Marvel 2. Ms. Marvel, the previously mentioned Ms. Marvel, is going to be part of that film, as well as Monica Rambeau from WandaVision. So we know that character also survives the events of WandaVision. So, and that is slated for release November 11th of 2022.
So we got a while on that one.
Yeah. So, but I mean, we got 3 films in 2021. So we got a few in 2022. Of course, I'm trying to remember what other ones are going to be 2022. But anyway, Hawkeye series. So Haley Steinfeld taking on the role of Kate Bishop. Jeremy Renner is going to be a part of that series. And I think the thing I'm probably most excited about is that we've got Maya Lopez, possibly better known as Echo for Daredevil fans, is going to be part of this series as well.
Well, what I'm really excited about is this series is Pizza Dog will be on it. So we're getting live action Pizza Dog.
Yeah, I don't know why they keep calling Pizza Dog. I've heard him described as Pizza Dog or Yellow Dog, but in the comic book, he has a tag, and the name of the dog is Arrow. Yeah,
no, his name's Arrow, but I think there was the issue about him where like they called it Pizza Dog or something.
Yeah, maybe so.
But yeah, and again, there's sort of set pictures going around online of this right now too. You can look up if you want and see some of that. You see, Kate Bishop there with Hawkeye and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Another series, we've got She-Hulk with Tatiana Maslany. I'm probably again another name that I am butchering. You should know her from Orphan Black, and she was on a few episodes of Park and Recreation. Mark Ruffalo will probably be in it, I'm going to assume, for the first episode. So that to me implies they're going to do the blood transfer, how she gets her powers, so from a relative. Something that really surprised me was that Tim Roth is going to be returning as the Abomination. So I'm actually okay with that. And this series, of course, whatever was announced, and initially whenever Tatiana Maslany was announced as playing She-Hulk, she actually denied the rumors, but I guess that's just because they hadn't finalized the contract yet. So now it is official. So there's also,
I look forward to this one.
Yeah, there's also rumors that because Jennifer Walters is a lawyer, that this could be a series that we could have Charlie Cox show up in as Matt Murdock. So that is all rumor mill at this point. But I would be good.
I'm all for that. I'm going to categorize that under fans' wishful thinking until we get something more official on that. I think people really want, some of the Netflix actors back. Again, we'll see.
Yeah, I think, Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson, out of all of the Netflix series, those are probably the main two that people want to see.
Yeah.
I would be okay with Luke Cage transferring over as well. Was it Michael Colton? I may be butchering his name.
Was it Coulter?
Coulter, yeah, Coulter. I thought he was really good as Luke Cage.
Yeah.
I just think some of the stories, especially the first season, was just a little weak, but I thought he was good. So I'd like to see him over, but I could care less about Kristen Ritter, or obviously I've even blocked the guy's name out that played Iron Fist now just because. But yeah, I can do without those.
I'm gonna say too, if they're bringing back Tim Roth to play Abomination, I want Tim Blake Nelson back to be the leader. That we got teased at the end of Incredible Hulk and never happened.
Oh, that would be so good.
So yeah, they can get him. They could definitely get Tim Blake Nelson.
Oh yeah, and that would be awesome. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
So. Another series, just really light on details. Moon Knight's going to get a series. Mohammed Diab will be directing. This is one of those. The rumor mill has Oscar Isaacs associated, but there was no announcement in this call. A Secret Invasion series, which I'm assuming will be live action, though they don't explicitly say that it's going to be live action, with Samuel L. Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn, who played Talos. Both those actors are returning for this series. Another series for Ironheart with Dominique Thorne as Riri Williams. We're getting an Armor Wars series with Don Cheadle returning as James Rhodes.
This is probably the one I'm looking forward to the most out of like the new stuff that was announced. Like I was like, oh, this could be a really cool thing. And again, I don't know if this is like they're going to treat it like a one season miniseries kind of thing or what, because I know they're doing some of the Star Wars stuff like that. Yeah. But it's like, yeah, I'm really looking forward to Don Cheadle coming back. I feel like we kind of thought he was gone, with Robert Downey Jr. leaving and not making Iron Man movies now, because they had talked years ago about doing a War Machine movie with Don Cheadle that we never got. So I'm like, yeah, bring him back. And again, the Armor Wars story I think is kind of evergreen. And, they've definitely explored that theme in the movies of Tony Stark's technology kind of getting away from him. Mm-hmm. In the comics, that's what Armor Wars is all about.
Yep. So,
again, I think there's a lot of story potential there. I think it's a story you can kind of fit in at any point.
Yeah.
Especially now that Tony's dead. Mm-hmm. Spoilers.
Yeah.
You can definitely play with that now. As, people kind of carving up his empire maybe, or, kind of taking the tech and running with it.
Yeah.
Again, it maybe wasn't as explicitly dealt with in the Marvel movies, but if you go back and look, a lot of the problems were Tony's tech getting away from him.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Guardians of the Galaxy 3, James Gunn is going to be working on that. That's going to have a 2023 release, but before the release of that film, we are going to get a Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. So I am assuming that we will see that in December of 2022, though they don't announce when that's actually going to come out. But that would make the most sense to me. If the film's coming out in 2023, we'd see it around Christmas 2022. Groot is getting some animated shorts. I thought he already had some animated shorts, so I guess he's getting more animated shorts. Thor, Love and Thunder has added Christian Bale to play Gore the God Butcher. This was a really, really good Jason Aaron story. Yeah. So this could be really, really good. Again, this is something most people disagree with me about, but I am not fans of Taika Waititi as a director on this project. He plays it too much for laughs. And they're turning Thor, instead of being a braggart, they're turning him into a buffoon. And there's a fine line there, but I think they've gone more the buffoon route. And I hopefully this is a serious enough story that they will pull back from that. And I think With the speculation that Natalie Portman is going to do part of the Jane Foster Thor storyline, that we'll hopefully see a little bit more serious take than what we got in Thor Ragnarok, which was one of my least favorite of the Marvel Cinematic movies. So, you can scoff at me. Go ahead, get out of your system. And
I mean, they're gonna bring him back, dude. He can direct Thor movies as long as they'll let him. You know what I mean?
Well, as long as they make money.
Yeah, exactly.
Then they will. But man, it's just like.
I can think, especially if you're bringing in Gore, I don't need like how Ronan was handled in Guardians of the Galaxy. You know what I mean? It's like he is the God Butcher. He has slaughtered gods. That's his thing.
Yep.
It was and you had the God Bomb in the story, in the comic and everything. It was a really good run. I see Christian Bale probably bringing some intensity to that role if I had to guess.
Yep.
So again, I don't need Thor playing Bugs Bunny around that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so. Exactly. So like we got, that was one of my complaints, about the Thor Ragnarok, is that, and somebody else said this, but that you just didn't feel like you were in peril, Asgard's being destroyed, and it's like it was no big deal.
Right.
They're still, playing for laughs all the way through that. So it needs to move away from that. And
again, I don't know. Who knows how close they're going to stick to these storylines from the comics, but part of the Jane Foster story was that she had cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine they're going to do that in a Disney movie, a Disney Thor movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, you don't want a real lighthearted romp when you're dealing with issues like that.
Exactly. So, Ant-Man and Wasp, Quantum Mania. So we got Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly are back. We got Kang as the bad guy, and Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer are also back. Jonathan Majors will be playing Kang, and Peyton Reed will be behind the camera, no relation. And then the last announcement was Black Panther 2. They are not going to recast Chadwick Boseman T'Challa. Ryan Coogler will return as the director. They've got a release date of July 8th, 2022, which I don't know that they've even started on this film yet. So that seems a little optimistic in my mind, but I would also place bets that we'll see Shuri take on the mantle of the Black Panther, and that's comics accurate. So I'm absolutely good with that. So, and Letitia Wright, I like her. I liked her in the series. So yes, I'm all for it.
So one thing that seems very apparently missing is a Namor movie or series or anything. I just, of all the Marvel characters that is really at that highest tier, he's yet to make his appearance, and Lord knows we all need something to take away
the bad taste of Aquaman out of our mouth.
Yeah, I was gonna let you say, yeah.
Okay, so one, Namor has been tied up with Fox for the Fantastic Four stuff for a long time. I don't know that Namor is the first story that you want to do with the Fantastic Four. I think it's better off, getting a good Doctor Doom story or something along that lines is where you really need to go with the Fantastic Four. Some people are hinting that, there was some hints of Atlantis in Endgame when they talked about the undersea earthquakes and all that good stuff. That being said, and I'm gonna get myself in trouble here, but the general public who is the financially, making all these movies successful, doesn't know who Namor is. And when they see an underwater guy from Atlantis show up, they're going to say they're ripping off DC.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's never happened to DC.
But here's the thing: is at the comic level, it's different than the movie level.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the film, I think Marvel's going to be hesitant to bring in Namor just for that reason, because well,
that's the same thing as bringing Darkseid. Bringing Darkseid in, if people that don't know the difference between him and Thanos are going to say, that Thanos came first.
Yeah, but no, and it's just the ignorance of the general movie-going populace when it comes to Marvel and DC characters and their histories. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's my take.
here's the other part of that is Namor wasn't tied up with Fox. The rights for Namor were bought by Universal.
Okay, thank you.
And so apparently it sounds like they have a similar deal with the Hulk, where Universal released the Ang Lee Hulk movie. Universal still owns part of the distribution rights to a Hulk movie. That's why we're not getting a standalone Hulk movie from Disney, because it would have to make Avengers money on its own to be profitable for Disney and Universal, for Disney to consider doing it. So it sounds like they still, and I just kind of looked this up because I know this is really out of date information here. This deal goes back years. But apparently, as of 2018, even Kevin Feige said the rights for Namor were still complicated. So that, to me, is signaling it's a distribution deal like they had with Hulk. Disney's not going to want to make a standalone Namor movie. Again, is Namor going to be, again, and you could have said this about Iron Man 20 years ago, is, he's not like one of the top tier characters. Will people get behind a Namor movie? I think, Marvel definitely has a golden touch to a degree. I think they could still obviously make a profitable Namor movie. Will it be profitable enough for them to risk it? Probably not. I think, again, we probably see Namor, if anything, we see Namor in other movies, like we're getting Hulk and Avengers movies and Thor and stuff like that now. Again, I would love to see Namor as a villain in a Fantastic Four or an Avengers movie, first time we see him. But yeah.
I don't want anything I said to mean that I would love to see Namor in a movie, but I just think that's what the general public is going to think.
Sure.
Yeah, they don't understand the character and how different the character actually is from Aquaman.
No, you're totally right with all that.
Yeah. Other than the licensing stuff. So.
Yeah, but yeah, that's kind of because this was something I wondered years back too, and I kind of looked into it, and it was like, Universal had the rights, they just never moved on it.
There's a pretty what looks like a pretty good article to me from February of this year on Screen Rant that talks about the details, and it says a lot of what you just said. That they were quoting Kevin Feige from 2014, about the details of the Namor and the property. So,
but again, I feel like I would love to see him introduced as a villain. We could do Atlantis Attacks or something. I feel like that's an Avengers level threat right there. And then maybe at the, next time you see him, he's a good guy now. Yep. You know what I mean? Have him go back and forth like he does in the comics. I think it'd be an interesting, take something they don't. I mean, you could argue, they kind of do that with Loki. Again, I
whatever suits his agenda.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and get Keanu Reeves in there. So.
All right. I don't know. That's all I got, which was obviously more than I think we thought we were going to talk about on those.
Well, it's a lot of stuff they dropped there. We didn't even get into the Star Wars stuff
or the Disney stuff.
The new Indiana Jones movie they're making with Harrison Ford.
Mm-hmm. So
we ended up with him in the hospital.
Yeah. Again.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so I guess one more question. Out of all those things. And what are you most looking forward to out of all that? I think you kind of said.
I'm definitely looking forward to Armor Wars. I really like Don Cheadle. Give me more Don Cheadle in there. Give me War Machine. Again, I think it's a recognizable enough story that you can adapt. You can change up quite a bit of Armor Wars. No one's going to throw a fit about it. Mm-hmm. This isn't my Armor Wars. Whatever. Nobody eats that.
There's been multiple Armor Wars series.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I think there was an Ultimate version too.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there. I think that's definitely a show you could do multiple seasons of. And you sort of get your Iron Man fix with it, and I think you'll probably get the same thing with Ironheart when they do that. So,
I'm probably most looking forward to Hawkeye just because of Maya Lopez being attached to that series, and I like the Kate Bishop character as well. So, whenever that finally hits the ground, I think that'll be good. With a close second to the Peggy Carter, Captain Britain, What If episode. So, Mike, what about you? What are you looking forward to out of that group?
Well, based on the trailers that's been released, WandaVision has me hooked the most, but I also am very interested in What If and the She-Hulk.
Well, should we jump over to Vigilante before we get too much more into this?
Yeah, I think so. So we're going to keep continuing our look at the 80s Vigilante series now. We are up to issue 34 here. And so this issue is written by Paul Kupperberg with art by Todd Smith and Rick Magyar this time. And so this issue kind of continues where we were with the bomber who was kind of blowing up, gyms and things like that.
Yep.
But we start out here with some sort of street level gang stuff. And we have Vigilante, who is this is Vigilante that's Dave now, chases bailiff kind of out on the streets, blowing away bad guys. And then we have a scene where we have Lieutenant Stein, the cop who won't let the Adrian Chase thing go, kind of handing his files over to a reporter. He's been shut down by his superiors. And so he's leaking the story now, so there'll be some traction on this, and hopefully with his investigation. We have another scene where Marcia is visiting Adrian in the hospital, and Dave shows up, and they are introduced for the first time. And we have Adrian waking up and accusing Marcia and Dave of having an affair or something. He seems really out of it at this point. Again, these are his friends. People are here to support him, and he just thinks they're trying to stab him in the back. Then we're introduced to a character named Skeezix, who apparently Dave has paid, is a hacker who Dave has paid to hook him up with a very 80s computer system to hack into the NYPD files so he can find a description of the bomber, and he gets a little fax-style printout here. There's like some sort of effect on the art where they're trying to look like an 80s sort of computer printout.
Dot matrix.
Yeah, dot matrix. Yeah, I can't even remember the term anymore, Scott. It's so long.
I wonder if it's 9-pin or 24-pin dot matrix.
Right. But then we have a scene of another gym blowing up, and we see the bomber kind of walking away, talking about the sinners and how he's on a mission from God. Taking it way more seriously than the Blues Brothers did.
Yeah.
But we see an officer on the street, though, who recognizes him and goes after him. Unfortunately, the officer runs afoul of a tripwire and is blown up in an alley pursuing the criminal. We have Vigilante then tracking down a guy named, I think, does he just call him Sarge? Yeah, Sarge, I think, who is this sort of military nut who turns out didn't serve but is obsessed with Vietnam, and trying to get information out of him because this guy is an arms dealer. And he tells him that he sold plastique to someone. Oh, he moved 20 pounds of plastique. And then cut to Adrian kind of checking himself out of the hospital. Kind of a funny scene when he leaves. He kind of gets rid of his, hospital gown and puts on a doctor's outfit that presumably he stole from someone. And then commenting that his mom would be proud. First he's a lawyer and now he's a doctor, or at least a lawyer in doctor's clothing. We see the bomber in a church kind of praying. And then a priest coming up and talking to him. He kind of runs out before, he doesn't want to deal with anyone right now, but he leaves his bag behind. He realizes that the priest will recognize, that what his equipment is and that who he is. We then have Vigilante staking out a location, looking for the bomber. He's just sort of sitting up on this sign of a building and kind of just waiting all day, seeing if he sees, because, they have a description now. They know what the bomber looks like. Mm-hmm. He's just, out on this street kind of seeing if the guy shows up. He kind of works in that area. At the end of the day, he kind of gives up and leaves.
But real quick, the sign that he is set up on is a movie theater, and they're playing Highlander. So.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah. I have to mention that.
Yeah, which is a good movie.
But then he sees, as he's leaving, he sees the bomber walking down the street and going down into the subway. So he starts to follow him. Now we see another police officer who also recognizes him and kind of chases after him. The bomber throws a small explosive at the officer and blows him up in the subway. Dave kind of gets blown back into a newsstand. And at the end of the issue here, we see a newspaper with a headline saying New York City judge implicated in Judge Wells' murder case. And this is Adrian. So the story has leaked now of, what was Adrian doing? Why, saying that he killed Wells, when he technically he did, but it was in self-defense, as Wells was the second vigilante. But that's kind of our cliffhanger here. Does anyone have anything they want to bring up about this one, or
not about this one? Nope.
There's only one comment about issue 34, and that's there was a couple panels where Winston, they shaded out, the artist shaded out his eyes completely. It just looked unusual. Did you notice that?
In the mask, or just on his face?
No, in his civilian guys, it was just completely. It just didn't match up. And everybody else, you could see their pupils and. It was normal, but with him, it was all black. Page 6. Yeah. Just, you're the artist, Dan. I thought maybe you'd have an answer for that.
What page is? Oh, page 6. Well, it is a darker kind of office, smoky office room, because again, you can still smoke back there in an office. Yeah. You got a lot of shadows. You have a lot of other people looking like they have sunken eyes there too. Like there's a lot of shadows on people's faces. I don't think that's really out of place there.
Okay.
Yeah, if it were in one of these better lit scenes, yeah, it would look weird. But I think that's just. And again, that one panel does look a little off.
Okay, and I don't think that first one really caught my attention as much as when I got to the page with the hacker, and the hacker looked normal, and Winston again, all sunken in eyes.
Yeah, you know what? I'm flipping through the hospital scene where they go to see Adrian. It's got that too. Yeah, again, I think we're running into an issue of we have different artists on every issue of this book at a certain point.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a consistent visual style when you're doing that. I mean, as far as the art goes, the thing I wanted to bring up is again, sort of in the middle of that hacking scene. Is he's kind of making his plans and typing away, but then we have a second head appear on his body, and it's the vigilante's mask. And again, his body is kind of turning into the vigilante suit as it goes across. And again, that's not a literal thing; it's supposed to be a more symbolic representation of him, being vigilante. As I was reading this, it reminded me of Steve Ditko's split Spider-Man face. And here, coming up in another issue, we're going to get something very similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I feel like that's something you don't see a lot in comics that much that artists could definitely take advantage of.
Sure.
I think it's just it's a careful line you have to kind of walk there, where it can't be confusing for the reader.
Right.
So, and again, I don't think this is. I know where he's going with that, but I just thought it was. And again, we haven't really seen that in this series at this point, so it's kind of interesting that that's in there. I think, was it the Sarge scene too? I want to say, okay, yeah. So, again, my copy here I've got doesn't have page numbers in it, but the scene where he's kind of beating up Sarge. Oh, so it's right when Sarge is talking about the 20 pounds of plastique he sold. So the way this is staged, you have Vigilante kind of holding him by the collar or the strap of his tank top or whatever. But the way that they've positioned the Vigilante's head, Sarge is looking over Vigilante's head. He's not looking him in the face. He's like looking over his head the way they positioned Sarge's eyes. It's kind of a weird thing. And again, it's probably just a deadline thing of trying to get the art done on time. But to me, it was kind of noticeable as I'm reading it, just like why he's not looking at him in the face of the guy that's beating him up. Kind of weird.
Yeah.
Again, probably something that nobody even thought about in the moment. Yeah, just nobody real notable in the letter column this time, I think. But we do have a writer who lists himself as the Butcher. So I thought that name kind of stood out. I don't remember seeing the Butcher in any other letter columns of the time. And again, just some sort of weird, some fun time capsule stuff. On the end of the letters page, we have an ad for Batman Year One. Right after that, we have an ad with Ozymandias looking at his monitors for Watchmen. And then after that, the last interior page and the back cover are ads for John Byrd's Man of Steel miniseries, which he's doing at the time. So
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where this fits in timeline-wise with everything that DC was doing at the time. So moving on to chapter 35. Right out of the gate, we got a nice John Byrne cover here, which, again, they'll talk about in this. He's kind of busy right now, kind of doing the bi-weekly Man of Steel Superman reboot. But we've got the story opens here with Dave, Vigilante, chasing down the bomber as he throws sort of a handheld explosive at him. And he runs off into this sort of dilapidated, abandoned church. And so what is it? So we have sort of a flashback to what the bomber's been up to with the officers he's killed. And okay, so yeah, here at the top of page 7, we have Dave kind of thinking, and then we do the sort of split face Ditko Spider-Man thing where half of his face is Dave and the other half is the Vigilante mask.
Oh, okay.
So again, I think that maybe works a little better than the second head we got in issue 34. So this one is pretty much straightforward. Gives some backstory to the bomber, the sort of religious background he has, and with the military and things. But kind of a big shootout here in the church. We have Adrian kind of holed up at home now. We've got reporters outside his house, but he's not kind of answering questions or giving any statements right now. What he does do is try to burn some of his evidence in the furnace of his house from the tarp that he had Alan's body on with his blood, which, cops will find that when they get the search warrant for your house, but whatever. Then we have, we're back to the fight with Vigilante and the bomber, and the bomber has like a grenade launcher now. So they're kind of upping the stakes here. He's got like some booby traps going on in the church and different things. Again, we see another tripwire tied up to some dynamite. Vigilante sees it though as they're fighting and actually kicks the bomber over the trip line so it doesn't get hit. But then we have some officers arriving on the scene who run right into the tripwire, and they blow up real good. Then Vigilante is kind of walking around in the dark here, and the bomber gets the drop on him and kind of knocks him out. Then we have a quick interlude here outside Las Vegas, where we have
silly.
We get some mobsters run afoul of Saber and Cannon. The assassins, from early on in the series here show back up. And then we see them sort of relaxing at home, I guess.
Well, before we get to them relaxing at home.
Okay.
So their ambush is to dig giant holes for themselves along the highway and wait for the car that's coming by at 55, 60 miles an hour.
Uh-huh.
And that's when they're going to go after him.
Yeah.
You couldn't find some rocks to hide behind?
It's just desert out there. There's nothing out there. What are you going to do?
My notes is like, did Saber and Cannon actually bury themselves under the sand?
Yeah.
I think so. That'd be hard to surprise anybody if you're buried in the sand and you have to get out of it in time to actually ambush. So yeah, I had the same thought.
They're professionals.
Obviously, clearly.
So yeah, the next page, they're just not saying it right.
Right.
We all know at this point what's going on with Saber and Cannon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wait, I'll go back to my first time I made an observation of that back in within the first 10 issues, and his even that last panel on that page, he's talking about, he pops open a bottle of wine or champagne or something and says now it's time to celebrate or something like that, and the visual cue was him pulling the towel off. So yeah, it was like, what did he just do?
Yeah, I mean it's the 80s. They're just not saying it. I think
Yeah.
Of course, you could go the opposite way with that, and since Cannon has the Jim Carrey Dumb and Dumber haircut,
my Lord.
maybe it's just Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels from Dumb and Dumber. I don't know.
That's what that looks like. Yeah. We'll make sure they get cast in that.
Yeah.
So then we cut back to the kind of the big fight at the church here. We get grenades thrown around, people being shot up. More cops show up on the scene. The bomber goes up to the sort of tower there and shoots down at the cops. Vigilante kind of finally is able to sneak up on him. and activates one of the explosives in his vest and kicks him over the edge. And so he blows up midair. And from the sort of sound effects here, it looks like he sets off a few devices that he has strapped to him and kind of blows them up there. Again, something that could have been, if this were being made now, I feel like that page would be a lot more grisly than what we're getting there. This is like a step up from Jack Kirby's Human Torch, kind of effects on the body there. But then we have Lieutenant Stein showing up to arrest Chase at his home. And then we see Marcia resigning from her position so that she could defend Adrian in court. And so she goes to meet him at the police precinct, I assume, after that, telling him that, she will be defending him in this. And that's the end of this issue.
Now we need to make it clear that this actually continues in annual number 2.
Yeah.
And then a new storyline picks up in Vigilante number 36.
Yeah, because I think it's out of order on was it Comixology and the DC Universe app has these in different orders, but yeah.
Yes.
And it even says that in this issue too, that the story continues in annual 2. And then, a new story in the next monthly issue.
Right.
Just a real quick thing too. At the back of the letters column, they give a shout out to John Byrne for doing the cover, talking about how busy he is doing 2 issues of Man of Steel a month and penciling Legends. So that's about around this time too, which we'll get into that with the Peacemaker story. But they also say that he's writing a novel, and I had never heard this, but I looked it up. It's called Fear Book. He wrote a back in the 80s when he was doing all this stuff too, apparently.
Really?
Yeah. And it's on Amazon. You can find it. I think it's probably out of print, but you can get a copy of it on there. And then back cover is on the printed issue is a Watchmen ad featuring Dr. Manhattan, which looks kind of cool. It's neat seeing because you see the Watchmen art. The story's been in print for so long. It's kind of neat seeing the advertising art that's actually different images from what you've seen for the last 30, 40 years.
All right, so annual 2.
So yep.
All right, so annual 2 is going to give us the wrap up, like Mike was saying about issues 34 and 35. So we start the issue with Adrian and Marcia on the.
Well, real quick, we start this issue with a badass Brian Boland cover.
Oh man,
I love that. And I remember this from when I was young, just seeing ads for this in other DC books. You would see this Vigilante cover a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yep. So again, Adrian and Marcia are on the courthouse, and they're on their way into the trial. They're basically deflecting questions. But we got Lieutenant Stein, who is responsible for Chase. What's going on with Chase? They're kind of watching in the wings. So we transition over to Vigilante. He's taking out this old brownstone, apparently looking for witnesses to help Chase in his case when he gets ambushed by Saber and Cannon. So they fight it out for a little bit here. Then back in the courtroom, we get the prosecution's opening arguments. Chase is basically not helping Marcia too terribly much. He's almost like he just wants to admit to everything and just kind of be done with it. But she kind of talks him down from that. Then we get a quick little sidebar. Well, I guess I shouldn't use sidebar because they're not in the courtroom anymore. Of this apparently very athletic boss who is kind of behind what's going on now with the gang wars that are in New York, and is also hired Cannon and Saber to go after Vigilante. So back to the fight between Vigilante and Cannon and Saber. Vigilante is definitely at a disadvantage because both these guys are fairly well trained. But he holds them off long enough, is able to actually shoot Saber. And even though Cannon has a knife in Vigilante's back, he's more concerned about what's going on with Saber, doesn't realize he was shot with a tranquilizer dart instead of an actual bullet. So he carries him off, trying to get him to a hospital or to get him some help. Back at the courthouse, they're in recess. So Marcia and Adrian are, making plans for lunch. Marcia basically confronts Adrian about his lack of, care in the courtroom. And we kind of get this scene where Adrian's feeling a lot of guilt and kind of has this breakdown here with Marcia. So next thing, we've got an injured Vigilante heading back to his apartment. tries to sneak in, but lo and behold, Dave's girlfriend Anne is there and catches him sneaking back in. And then Dave passes out and wakens about 4 hours later, and Anne is there. She's the one that pulled him out of the uniform, and surprisingly is pretty okay with him being the vigilante, which she's going to regret that here in just a few issues.
Can I interrupt right here?
Absolutely.
Mike, were you reading this digitally?
I am.
Are you on that page by chance?
I'm on. I mean, I can flip over. I'm around 21, 22, just keeping up with Scott's reading of it.
So in the apartment there, what color does the floor look like in your digital copy?
Yellow.
Okay, like pretty pale though.
Like a very pale yellow, yeah.
Yeah, because even in the printed, that looks like a 30% yellow for like the CMYK printing process, and it's really pale in my printed copy. I was just wondering if like the colors were still getting washed out digitally.
Yeah, maybe. On the art though, I mean, I'm less distracted by coloring issues like that. When you have Ross Andrew, I like his poses, I like his action, but Tony DeZuniga, his inks really improve Ross Andrews' pencils.
Right.
They kind of overtake them, but I'm really liking the art in this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was just wondering like how the colors were looking here, and I just saw that as I was reading this, like that's a good example, kind of a good kind of check for that. Because you've got that real pale yellow, which they didn't even used to use, back in the day, but here in the 80s we're kind of getting it now, but it is really pale, like any lighter and it would look white, I think, on the page even.
Yeah, it's very pale, yeah.
Okay. All right, so we get a 2-page interlude back with Cannon and Saber. They're both okay. But they realize that they goofed because they mentioned that their boss was in Long Island, and now Vigilante probably heard that, and lo and behold, sure enough, we see Vigilante on a motorcycle just deciding, I'll just drive around Long Island until I see something that might be a clue. Well, he gets lucky.
Comic logic, so it works.
That's right. So he does.
I still can't get over the haircut. I wasn't going to bring it up until you did, Scott, but that Mo Howard.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you take a guy like that seriously?
He wears a mask.
If he's throwing knives at you, I guess that you have to take him seriously. But wow.
So Dave, while he is driving around Long Island, he does pick up a tail. So and then he kind of sneaks off, and whenever they find his discarded bike, he gets to jump on him and convinces one of them to take him to their boss. Back in the courtroom, the prosecution brings their first witness, and Marcia is able to pretty quickly, kind of prove that this woman is a little crazy. So not a whole lot of value put in this first witness. Vigilante then is snuck into the grounds, but it turns out this was all a trap. However, even though he's surrounded by 6 guys, he's able to actually pretty quickly defeat the guards, as well as the boss. But at that point, Cannon and Saber come smashing back into the scene, and then we transition back over to the courtroom. Adrian, they're in another recess, and Lieutenant Stein comes up to Adrian Chase, and basically during this conversation, Adrian just admits everything that he had done as the vigilante to Lieutenant Stein, who is, by the way, going to be for the prosecution. Flipping back over to the vigilante, who's now fighting Cannon and Saber. The boss that hired the two is able to escape on a yacht, and then during the fight, Vigilante is able to position himself between Cannon and Saber and dodges a shot from both of them, and they take each other out. I don't know if they're dead at this point. They both have survived worse things than this, but they're definitely incapacitated, if not dead at this point. And then back to the courthouse to kind of wrap up this story. Stein, up on the witness stand, basically admits to, and really kind of without even being prompted by the prosecution, that he entered Chase's residence without a warrant, found the initial clues, and this causes the entire case against Adrian Chase to be thrown out. And then Marcia and Adrian admit their love for each other, and they live happily ever after. Well, not really. So doesn't last very long. So anything else to add on the annual 2?
Go ahead, Dan.
Mike already kind of spoke to this, but yeah, I really like the Ross Andrew art here. Again, it is something kind of different from what we've seen previously in this series. So yeah, it's a nice change of. I mean, I'm not saying we've had bad art this whole time, but it is kind of a nice change of pace there. Sort of a scratchier, sketchier style. And again, that's not a put down or anything like that. It's just a different energy to the art. But yeah, I like that. And again, I don't know, the heavy-handed, ironic, deaths of Saber and Cannon where they take each other out. It's like, all right, sure, why not?
Yeah, that's somewhat convenient, but it's a
yeah, it's a comic.
Yeah. So fedora hats. It just seems like I see them all the time in this. What's that, Dan?
You can't wear a fedora, Mike.
Maybe I will. But fedora hats, I see them a lot in this series, whether it's a detective or it's a bad guy or whatever. But it's made me start wondering, when was the last time? I mean, it's already outdated to have them, I think, in the late 80s. But I wonder when the last time anyone was portrayed in a comic with a fedora hat, because it had to be. Surely they stopped soon after this.
Well, Dick Tracy still does it on a daily basis in the comic strip.
Well, I think that's alternate universe maybe, but yeah. But I had a couple other comments or notes that for being such a marksman with knives, Cannon was only able to stick Vigilante in the right shoulder, and I think seeing how Saber and Cannon worked together, constantly doing the Keystone Cop routine where they're running around in circles, getting in each other's way, and then they ultimately killed each other. Supposedly, they'd been better off being working alone. So they might have lived longer.
I think they were getting distracted during their training sessions, and that definitely worked against them in the end.
Oh, Dan, that's a good. Well, and then finally, I did like the how it wrapped up. Lieutenant Stein purposely fouled up the trial by admitting that he illegally searched Chase's house. He didn't use a search warrant, and that pretty much made everything invalid. The evidence was invalid, and the fruit of the forbidden tree, any kind of evidence that comes out of that, is no longer admissible either. So, bada boom, bada bing, and that's it for Adrian's legal problems. So, good for him.
Yeah, because a lot of I guess we didn't really get into this, but a lot of the back and forth with Adrian Marcia is that he can't just say what happened, that he killed Alan in self-defense, because then he has to say that he's vigilante and he's done all this other stuff.
Yep.
That's definitely a theme that kind of runs through here. Is like, will he just admit to this? Will he say that he, give up that he is vigilante and, be held responsible for all the other stuff he's done?
Yeah, that predicament reminded me of the Three Jokers, without getting into any detail, because I know we maybe will be reviewing it at some point. But
you mean the story started off really well, but was really disappointing at the end?
No, well, okay, that maybe, but more specifically, the I can't turn someone in without revealing my secret identity, that kind of thing. But do we want to then, Scott? Do you want me to take over 36, 37, and you wrap up 38? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, like was said, that ended. The annual 2 ended one story arc. Issue 36 starts a new one. It's a 3-issue arc, and it features Peacemaker, one of the Charlton characters that was acquired by DC. So the cover is by Mike Grell, and it might not be, it's not quite as good as the Brian Boland, but it's still pretty darn good. It has Peacemaker in a plane shooting Vigilante from the inside of the plane. Really nice image. Mike Grell sometimes I think is underrated even to this day. But anyway, so just a little background on Peacemaker. He is one of my, favorite D-list characters, maybe E-list. I'm not sure. He's pretty far down on those on the ranks on that. But he was originally a Charlton Comics character from the 60s, created by Joe Gill and Pat Boyette. And when DC acquired the rights to the character in the 80s, they released a 4-issue miniseries. That was my first exposure to this guy. He had a very unique look. You know, he had this helmet with a dove image on the forehead of it, with this kind of strange, I don't know, like an arching piece over the helmet.
Like a croissant over his helmet.
Yeah, it's just seemed like he'd have one of those. He'd be one of those characters that have a hard time getting through, you know, tight spaces because of the helmet. But anyway, visually though, not off-putting though. I even though it's odd looking. So he did die in regular DC continuity in the that Eclipso event in the early 90s, I think. And he'll be starring in the Suicide Squad movie and in his own TV show on the earlier mentioned HBO Max, for those that are able to get it or choose to get it. He served as the inspiration for the comedian in The Watchmen. So anyway, that was the background on him. The name of the story is Mask of Death by Paul Kupperberg, Dennis Cowan, and Kyle Baker. And I'm not sure when Kyle Baker's first work was, but I would think this is pretty early on in his career. Fresh.
Here's the other thing too. Has he inked Dennis Cowan before?
I've never seen that combo before.
Ever. It's a good combo though. I can see an editor. I can see the wheels turning and putting these guys together. I think visually it makes a lot of sense. And
really, I thought this art was pretty sloppy.
Well, I think their styles go together pretty well. I think it's early for Kyle Baker for sure. But again, I think it's one of those things. I think, again, if you did it now, you'd have a better collaboration. But I don't think you're going to get these guys together again either. Was kind of where I was going with that.
Right. I'm so used to seeing Dennis Cowan on his own anyway, so this was interesting to see Baker with him. But so fresh from his acquittal in the murder trial of Alan Wells, Adrian Chase and former DA Marcia King, also his on-again, off-again girlfriend, are preparing to take off for London. As a woman tries to store her luggage in the overhead storage in the plane, a pistol falls out, plus 2 hand grenades. Now, that's not something you would see today. It's actually it's pretty shocking. I mean, anyway, the plot being exposed, the hijackers, which call themselves the People's Liberation Army, take over the plane. The new vigilante is still hunting down the mob boss, and it's been taking over all the competition. We are at a compound in New Mexico. We're introduced to former Doom Patrol member Negative Woman Valentina Vostok, bandages and all, created by Paul Kupperberg, by the way, where she's discussing the hijacking with General Peterson. So she's kind of made the move over from superheroics to sort of like checkmate type status, where she's working in a sort of a shadow government agency role. Anyway, this General Peterson informs her that one of her people's about to get involved, meaning Christopher Smith, aka the Peacemaker. They comment extensively on his mental instability, which is a feature of this character. We'll see a lot of that in this issue and in forthcoming issues. But he is a very effective weapon against terrorism because of his instability. Christopher Smith is at the airport, apparently talking to himself. He believes that the souls of the villains, or the people that he's killed in the past, are in his head advising him, or in his helmet is the way he puts it, but it's obviously in his brain. Back to Vigilante. He hears the news about the hijacking and heads to the airport. Peacemaker sneaked onto the lower section of the plane while Vigilante watches from a distance. He gets into the cockpit and takes out one of the terrorists in a permanent fashion. No tranquilizer darts used by Peacemaker, as we've seen some other Vigilante type characters. As some of the passengers are being evacuated, Vigilante enters the plane and confronts the other terrorist, who turns to attack him, but is literally tripped by Adrian Chase. And, Adrian is just chomping at the bit to get into the action, and this was the most action he could get, by tripping the terrorist. Peacemaker kills two more of the terrorists in short order, and the three of them sort of converge. Vigilante grabs Peacemaker's arm, and in a replica of the cover, he shoots Winston's slash Vigilante multiple times in the chest, killing him. Adrian Chase, grief-stricken, pulls off the mask of the dead Winston and puts it back on himself. And all along, Marsha's watching, and she's very upset about this. So yeah, a lot of stuff happens in this first issue of this arc. Christopher Smith is back in service, realizes that the leader of the hijackers is on the loose, and decides to stick around to find him, which we'll probably see next issue. Adrian Chase, Vigilante, wakes up on a roof near the airport, and he recommits himself to his mission.
I was really surprised that they killed off Dave Winston in this issue, especially after him revealing to his girlfriend that he was the Vigilante. You would figure they'd want to squeeze in one or two stories about that interaction before they kill off the character. And spoilers, we don't hear anything about Anne in the next two issues either. So
that whole plot line, that whole thing died on the vine pretty abruptly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, pretty shocking too. Like, it's not, again, you see the cover kind of gives it away, but reading comics for so long, I don't believe covers.
Yeah.
You think it's a symbolic thing of him shooting the Vigilante, and I mean, you have exit wounds here on the cover, but you just kind of look past that, and you don't think, oh, whatever. Yeah, but it's like, no, that's what happens. Dave dies in this issue, just kind of out of nowhere, really.
Yeah, and just because he touched Peacemaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peacemaker is pretty brutal in this. Again, just really kind of blowing away the terrorists. Yeah, and again, speaking to the cover, again, a nice Mike Grell cover. We get some weird kind of positioning in here. It's something you want to try to avoid as an artist. But you have Vigilante kind of falling out of the plane as he's being shot, but his foot is positioned right over Peacemaker's crotch, to where it kind of looks like he's kicking him in the crotch. And again, that's not what's happening. That's not being implied or anything. It's just bad posing.
Well, I think the size of the foot makes it clear that he's closer to the reader than Peacemaker is.
Yeah, but again, this is something you try to avoid as an artist. Just these weird kind of overlaps like that. But yeah, good, first issue to the storyline here. Just really kind of dropping bodies here.
Right.
And we get a TM Maple letter in this one, too.
We'll be pointing these out from now on.
Yeah.
So issue 37 picks up where the action left off. Another Mike Grell cover. Not quite as dynamic as the previous issue, but still good. So Colonel Vostok, that's Valentina Vostok, a.k.a. Negative Woman, arrives in New York and meets with a special agent who used to handle Smith. He describes Winston as a Vietnam vet, but he thought that, again, I thought that he was not able to go into the armed forces because of the medical issues. So, again, I know we talked about this in previous episodes, but they both believe that Adrian Chase has resumed his role as the original Vigilante, and with Peacemaker as his target. So Adrian Chase sneaks into Winston's apartment, which was being guarded by at least 3 police officers, and he takes out one to get into the window through the fire escape. Chase believes that that if he had not quit being Vigilante, Wells and Winston would still be alive, so he's got this guilt trip still going on. He finds his old uniform and relishes completely in putting it back on. This is a key issue, I think, in that, this is where Adrian Chase finally turns the corner and is like fully committed to his destiny, or for ill, more likely for ill. Chase takes it to a new level by using deadly force on the cops is something I thought. I mean, even though he didn't, he's just like considering them cannon fodder, collateral damage. He kicks that cop over the fire escape to plummet to his death. To me, that sort of makes him irredeemable at that point. Chase then meets Vostok for the first time, and she guesses his identity pretty quickly and convinces him to cooperate with her operation because she has information that would lead to this terrorist. I don't know if he was the leader or if he was just one of the main players, Jamed. And then next we have Lieutenant Stein paying for his actions by being investigated by Internal Affairs, and before they can fire him, he quits and hands over his badge and gun. And the next scene we find Peacemaker having another conversation with his helmet, which honestly I kind of find entertaining, these conversations that he has. This is like, to me, perfect for a writer, and also it makes you wonder, with Katana, the Outsiders member, she always talked to her soul sword that that had primarily the soul of her deceased husband, but also anybody else that had been killed with that sword. So nobody ever accused her of being crazy, though. So anyway, as Peacemaker jumps from the rooftop to rooftop, he's being tailed by government agents in a helicopter. He takes them out somehow with his sidearm, which must be, I know we've seen pictures of this pistol-like weapon before with all of its attachments, but for it to take out a helicopter, it's got to be pretty awesome. In the next scene, we have Vigilante and Vostok staking out the ship where Jamed is holed up, and Vigilante agrees to sneak up on the ship, but Vostok insists he have a government agent with him. Chase says he will only agree to it being the recently fired Lieutenant Stein. So here we have the partnership of Stein and Chase, and to be honest, I think Stein's become one of my favorite characters in this series. I love the scene where he punches out the CIA agent that escorted him to Vostok from his apartment at gunpoint, telling him that if he ever points that gun at him again, he'll make him eat it. So I think that's pretty cool. I'll pause here if you guys got anything to interject.
Nope, not at this point.
Okay. So Colonel Vostok warns Stein to be careful with Vigilante because he's also unstable. I actually to be honest, I like Vigilante now being just committed to his instability than what he was before in his wishy-washy, what do I want to be mode. But as Vigilante secretes himself onto the ship, he takes inventory of how many terrorists there are there and what their weaponry is, which is a lot of automatic rifles and explosive. These next few pages felt like a video game to me because, that has an unlimited amount of enemies coming around the corner. I'm like, somebody put this on, the Duke Nukem toughest mode or something. Chase definitely seems to have a death wish going into this scenario, not caring if he makes it out dead or alive. Vigilante and Lieutenant Stein make their way through the ship, taking out these terrorists, and miraculously avoiding getting shot themselves in the process. Eventually, they come across Vostok again, who is not impressed with their recklessness. Chase comments that Vostok doesn't have a weapon, but she kind of gives a little clue that made me wishful that she might break out into her superhero mode. She says she doesn't need one. And I thought, man, that'd be cool if she just, went straight into negative woman and started really, dealing with these terrorists pretty quickly. So in the final page, they come across the Peacemaker in his helmet, full of souls, in the final standoff. To be continued. Pretty nice cliffhanger and a pretty cool issue.
They never refer to Vostok as Negative Woman in this issue, though, or any of these issues, do they?
I don't think so. Throughout the storyline, I don't think they actually say
no,
that.
She's never been in this. No, she, honestly, I think she did show up in the Greg Rucka Checkmate series, I think. But, she was part of that Doom Patrol revival in the late 70s by Kupperberg, and I can't remember if the art was Jim Aparo or if it was Joe Staten, but anyway, they did that 2 or 3 issues they were in Showcase, and then they with Steve Kupperberg, when they got their own series, Kupperberg wrote and Steve Lytle did the art for the first 15 or 20 issues.
Yeah, again, something I've kind of been reading the book lately too is I'm being reminded a lot of the Impact run of the Black Hood from the early 90s. So that was when DC kind of leased out the Archie superhero characters and kind of did their own take on them. So in that version, the Black Hood was a character who, there was a Black Hood that was passed on to characters where you became the Black Hood while you had the hood, and then the character would die and the hood would be passed on to another character. I keep being reminded of that in this run of Vigilante where someone else gets the mask until they die, they get the outfit. I'm really reminded of it here at the beginning where Adrian is running around plain clothes with just the mask, because that is something that would come up in the Black Hood series. There were different characters who had the mask and then they were just wearing regular clothes a couple times, that sort of thing.
Oh,
I'm not saying, Black Hood ripped off Vigilante or anything like that. They're their own thing, but it definitely kind of reminds me of that, where we're getting this sort of theme of legacy within the Vigilante series here. And, Adrian didn't die. He walked away from it, but we have Wells and Dave now who both died, and Adrian is, got this back to the mask again. Another fun kind of time capsule thing too is on the inside back cover here, we have an ad for the collection of The Dark Knight Returns, and they've got a hardcover and then the trade coming out, and this is the sort of airbrush style painted cover that wasn't like art from the series that was on the first printing of the collections, and the trade of this was the first copy of Dark Knight Returns that I had. And my copy fell apart over time, reading it so much. But it's kind of neat seeing that in there. And again, we have an ad for Legends crossovers in here too.
Ready for 38? Wrap it up for tonight?
You bet.
All right, so issue 38, going to get our conclusion of our Peacemaker story here. So we're still aboard the ship. Peacemaker has his gun on Vostok Stein and Vigilante. However, of all the three, Stein is the one that puts himself between Peacemaker and the others and kind of talks everybody down that they need to work together to go up against the terrorists. Back among the terrorists, you've got Jamad, who is basically getting a little antsy, being kind of locked up in a safe room with lots of guys around him with guns. He's basically wanting to just make a run for it. The other terrorists seem pretty content to die for the cause. We got a single page here. We're basically just in some random bar in Queens, and you've got this large group of white men who are at the bar sitting around watching TV and some of the reports of what's going on, and that they decide that somebody needs to stand up to all the Arabs, and they're going to take it as their problem and they're going to do something about it. Back on the ship, we've got Vigilante and Peacemaker are basically just together. There's kind of mowing through the terrorists. Jamad is still getting nervous, wants to make that run for it, so he grabs a gun, kills the guys he's there with, and gets out of the room. So I don't know, we're kind of moving into the end of this story. Anything you guys want to say about the first half of the story?
Back to the bar scene real quick. I just want to point out I appreciate that the letterer or the writer or someone specifically worded it so that the guy at the bar is saying Arabs as opposed to Arabs. Again, it's just a little detail there that I feel is, on point.
Yeah, and you talk about time capsules. Yeah. Reagan ain't gonna do it.
Oh yeah. Sure.
All right, so we have a little one-pager, again, another little one-pager kind of inserted into this story. We're at Bellevue Hospital, and we see Dr. Knopf, who we've not seen, I don't think, for several issues.
Yeah, quite a while.
Checking in on one of his patients, and lo and behold, that patient is Marcia, who basically is completely traumatized by the events of the last couple of issues where Chase, again, takes on the mantle of the Vigilante. I think that this is something that Kupperberg has done a really, really good job about, planting some seeds for some characters and then continuing to use those characters, on through. So Knopf's been good, and Stein, and he brought back Hall, so he continues to use these characters. So next we're at Peacemaker and the Vigilante are making their way to Jamad is supposed to be holed up, but he's gone because he shot everybody and left. Sign and I can't pronounce her last name. All of a sudden, Bostock, is that right? Basically meet up with them, and then Peacemaker and Vigilante leave to go after Jamad. Back over on the docks, speaking of Captain Hall, he's there questioning the feds why he does not have access to the docks. Hall is given a phone number, but kind of tosses that piece of paper onto the ground. It was odd that it wasn't a 555 number.
I know. Like, should we try calling this number real quick?
Yeah, should we do it live on the podcast and see if anybody answers?
Was it 202?
Please don't. But Jamad basically crawls out of the water to make his escape, and a couple of journalists who have been able to sneak onto the docks notice this going on and follow him. Jamad then runs into Peacemaker and the Vigilante, and the two of them get distracted by determining, okay, who gets to kill this guy? Vigilante actually is the one that gets the kill shot and then starts fighting Peacemaker. The journalists go live, broadcasting the events, that are going on here on the docks. And during the fight, Peacemaker removes Vigilante's mask, and it is revealed to the world that the current Vigilante is Adrian Chase.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, the police make it to the scene, and both Peacemaker and Vigilante decide to leave the scene. Back over to Stein, who is talking with Vostok, and basically she offers him a job because he doesn't have a job right now. So he is now going to become a employee for this group, an agent for this government group. We have another scene with the group from the bar, and they have taken to the streets. They've broken into a sports shop, stole several weapons, and are just streaming out to the streets, and it kind of lets off there. Some of them wearing some vigilante-like goggles, not with the red reflective, but kind of elicits that same look. And then Chase, basically understanding that his identity is completely gone now. I mean, he can't even go back to his home, can't do anything. So basically, it's kind of like, Adrian Chase is dead, and now he is only the Vigilante. To wrap up our Peacemaker story.
Yeah. I liked how Vigilante called Peacemaker crazy.
Yeah.
as the pot said to the kettle.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's basically this is the point where Chase kind of is now gone. He's over
right.
Before he might have been teetering on the edge, but now he is definitely, kind of over the edge. The point, like we said, where he kills the cop really is the one that pushed it. Yeah.
Was Peacemaker portrayed this way in the 60s, or was this like something DC added to him in the 80s? Does anybody know?
It was something that was added. I have a couple issues of his. I think he was in Fightin' 5, is where his first appearance was, and I've got a couple issues where he appears, and it's more like what we, kind of like Peacemaker in this story, where he uses the tranquilizer darts and other non-lethal weapons, as opposed to in this 80s version of him, he's full on lethal.
Right.
Well, that's probably the comics code being ignored for these that allowed that change.
Yeah.
But yeah, DC changed up Captain Atom quite a bit, though, in his 80s run, too, though. That's why I was wondering about that. I did like the scene where Vigilante and Peacemaker are going through the ship, and they go to where Jamad was, and they find the dead terrorists, and Peacemaker asks, did we do this earlier? Like, did they circle back around to where they've already been? And Vigilante says no, but they have to question it because they're just, killing so many guys here.
Yeah.
So I like that moment in the story here. I can't remember where it was in the story, but Vostok makes reference to why they have to keep Peacemaker a secret, and they are referencing the current storyline in the Legends miniseries, which is going on at the same time, I don't know if they really got into it in the story, but what they're referring to is there was a presidential decree outlawing superheroes at the time. So she's saying the U.S. government can't be seen using a superhero when they are, outlawed at this point. That was kind of the big story behind Legends, was the heroes were outlawed. And, post-crisis, this is how we got the new Justice League and Suicide Squad out of that storyline.
Great point, man. Yeah.
That doesn't go, they don't really go into that here in Vigilante. And a few issues back in the letters column, there's a question about, is Vigilante its own universe? Does it tie into the DC universe? Because, again, even at this point, it's been a while since we've seen some other DC characters in here. And you could see where they would want to kind of branch out and do their own thing. It makes sense. But, they say in the letters, answer to that, yes, Vigilante does take place in the DC universe. Again, now we have Peacemaker and Vostok in here. And, again, they're referencing what's going on with the bigger Legends storyline at the time. I just want to point out, too, this issue 38, we get the I don't want to say new, but the sort of slightly altered logo on this issue, which I think is for the rest of the run, where they've just sort of italicized the regular logo a little bit there. But I do like that version of it.
Oh, yeah. I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
I didn't notice, or I didn't remember that Peacemaker had body armor, or that he had this supersonics built into his helmet. And I did think it was funny, though, that he said he didn't like to use those high-tech powers, those non-lethal powers, because it didn't kill his opponents. Therefore, he doesn't get their souls.
Yeah. I did like where Vigilante calls them out, like, why haven't you used that before now? Because it was so effective. But here they are making their way through this ship.
Something about it just came to my mind reading this, but the way the Barflies all wanting to be the vigilantes too, and they break into the gun store and they riot and they wear their own versions of the vigilante mask, reminded me of the Joker movie, the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie, where that final scene where all the Joker wannabes were rioting.
Yeah, and again, I was kind of thinking early on that this would be a bigger theme in Vigilante, is copycats, and we have Wells picking up and that kind of thing, and Dave. But I mean, yeah, I think the man on the street sort of version of it, I think, is an interesting thing. I hope they do more with that in the series, but we'll see.
Yeah, I like the arc.
Yeah,
I did too. So yeah, I'm probably very fine plus on these 6 issues. I like the 3 issues for the story, and most of the art was pretty good, and I keep saying this every single time. I like the Kupperberg writing on Vigilante much better than the Wolfman writing on the character. So
yeah.
I'd probably go very fine on these 2. Again, I'm really liking these. And again, at this point, so this is 38, so we have 12 more issues, and that's it. Mm-hmm. So we're getting into the home stretch here on Vigilante. I don't know. I feel like I would have liked to see another character as opposed to Adrian coming back, but again, we'll see how that plays out.
There's 12 issues left.
I know, that's the thing. So there's only 12 issues. Like, we could have another one in there, but I feel like we probably won't. But again, it'd be interesting to see, what that could have been.
Maybe he'll pick up a sidekick.
Yeah, right. Kid Vigilante.
He'll wear a red bandana.
Actually, I think.
Yeah.
I think Kid Vigilante might be from the Danger Club book and Image. Now that I'm talking about it.
You have way too much information in your noggin.
Yeah, that was a good short run of a book.
I'll give this the first arc, the religious zealot, bomber. I'd give that a very fine minus, but this Peacemaker arc a very fine plus.
Well, are we done?
We're getting some really good covers too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's a good run of issues right there. 6 issues in one episode. Not to mention our Batman adventures continue and the news stuff that we talked about. So good stuff.
Yeah. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to bring up, or I feel like we kind of went over a lot here?
Yeah. Take us out, Dan.
All right. So just let everybody know, the store is open, Campus Comics. You can come by and see us at 816 Suite B, East Main Street, Carbondale, Illinois. We're open Tuesday through Saturday, 11 to 5. And again, if you want to call the store, the number is 618-457-6011, or you can find us on Facebook or Twitter. Scott, where can everybody find you?
Burgcomics.com, BURG comics.com has links to Facebook and Instagram and eBay and all that good stuff.
And Mike, what about you?
At Mike Atchison 5 on Twitter, and that's not a band.
Okay. It's not the Mike Atchison 5.
Right. Not to be confused with.
Right. And this is Dan Brown. You can find me online at Detective651 on Twitter, Instagram, and my TeePublic store. And it's the holidays right now. We got a lot of sales going on. Be sure to check that out. And you can find me at the store on most Saturdays. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Tell me. Hey, you already took out my books. What's he doing? Hey, did he get robbed? I don't know. Mug? Something? Did he get beat? Oh, good. They didn't find him. Okay, alright. Were you getting beat or something? Jeez. Hey, if you see me going up and downstairs, you'd be like, you'd understand why it takes so long. Well, I just think we heard this banging sound. Yeah. Oh, I don't know what that was. Maybe it was just me sitting in this chair. I'm not sure. No, it was after, between, halfway from the time you left to the time you came back. Oh, it was probably my stairs. I was trying to get upstairs. I have no idea. Oh, that's right. You gotta bum me, don't you? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Knees are. Give one of those chairs. It goes up the stairs. I should have muted. Well, that'll teach you. You'll know next time. Yeah, our reaction, that'll be the stinger at the end. Yeah, there we go. I need to write that down. 15 minutes. Oh, no. All right, we good? I'm good. Oh, y'all prepared now? That's a better way to put it, yes.